Hi, I'm Tallis Barker from waterfasting.org. I'm standing here by the side of the River Thames, just outside of Oxford. It's always nice to make a video in the presence of water, especially when talking about water fasting. Today, though, I'd actually like to talk about a question which comes in quite a lot, and that's to do with the differences between water fasting and dry fasting. Just as water fasting is gradually becoming more well known throughout the world, the same is applying to dry fasting as well. Unfortunately, though, a lot of people don't really seem to be aware of some of the fundamental differences between dry fasting and water fasting. I'd like to take a look at this issue in terms of healing on the one hand and detox and cleansing on the other. Because dry fasting and water fasting really do act quite differently on each of these two basic different fronts. So let's start by defining these two areas. Healing on the one hand is something which, from the word whole, is something where you're building yourself back to a unity. It's a question of bringing things together, bringing your health together as one. Cleansing and detox, on the other hand, is in a way the exact opposite. It's a question of taking things out of your body, removing toxins, and freeing yourself from them. Now, although dry fasting and water fasting share many different similarities, if we take a look at detox and cleansing first, for instance, both dry fasting and water fasting share several layers. The first, of course, is the fact that you give yourself a rest in terms of your digestive system. When you're not actually actively digesting food, your body has extra energy available to put into cleansing and detox. But in a dry fast, this often happens faster. The fact that you're not putting anything into your body during a dry fast means that your digestive system is able to switch off faster. And switching off faster, it's able to access cleansing and detox more easily. Water fasting, of course, means that you're not putting any calories into the body, but nevertheless, simply drinking, the act of putting a physical substance into your body, means that you are stimulating it on a physical level. And this means that your digestive system, as much as the production of enzymes in order to digest food, is going to slow down and eventually stop. Nevertheless, putting water in is going to slow down the entire process of switching off your digestion. In addition to this, of course, both dry fasting and water fasting access ketosis. In other words, the burning of fat cells. But again, exactly how this happens in dry fasting and water fasting varies slightly. In dry fasting, it's interesting to note the way that ketosis comes into existence a little more quickly. Exactly why this happens isn't known. Personally, I suspect it's to do with the fact that when you're dry fasting, you're obviously in danger of dehydration. And of course, if we dehydrate too much, this isn't good for us. The process of ketosis means that you're burning fat cells. These are long carbon chains in terms of their molecular structure. When you burn fat cells, free hydrogen atoms are released. Those hydrogen atoms meet oxygen in the blood, creating H2O, water. And as a result, dry fasting enables you to access that so-called metabolic water. In other words, the water which is produced through ketosis a little bit more quickly, slowing down the process of dehydration. Obviously, when you're water fasting, this isn't a big deal because you're drinking water. And I'm sure this has something to do with the fact that ketosis does accelerate quite a bit more quickly when you're dry fasting. In addition to this, there's a whole extra level of cleansing and detox which takes place in dry fasting, which simply cannot happen in water fasting. And that is through the process of dehydration itself. Wait a minute, dehydration is bad, right? Well, often in everyday life it is, because if we're sweating profusely, for instance, that's going to take us in a bad direction. But when we're dry fasting, something else is happening. We're drawing water out from from areas in our body which store fluids and otherwise don't have a chance to flush out the fluids. If you think of the human body as a river, when we're water fasting, we're pumping more water through that river and cleansing it as a result. Next to a river, you often find slower channels, sometimes even swamps. When it rains, when it floods, the biggest effect is on the main branch of the river itself. It tends not to affect the swamp so much, or those side channels. The best way to cleanse out those areas of water inside us is actually to dry out the swamp. And so effectively, what we're doing is creating a drought when we dry fast. And in doing so, all the toxins which have become stuck in those internal swamps have a chance to be released and cleansed. Okay, now let's take a look at healing on the other hand. Dry fasting is extremely strong when it comes to detox and cleansing and healing, but there's one huge disadvantage that unfortunately dry fasting incurs, and that is the element of time. In order to heal, we need time. And of course, when you're dry fasting, you're really just talking about hours and a few days maximum. Whereas with water fasting, you have the potential to go on for weeks, even a month or more. So if your main issue is a question of healing, simply a water fast is going to be more effective, even if per day it's less effective. Those days are just going to accrue and you can accomplish more with a water fast. So I think when you decide that you want to fast, it's important to understand what the reasons are. If the main reason is cleansing, detox, then dry fasting is going to be more effective, which isn't to say you shouldn't water fast, but it's important to know that this is where dry fasting has its true strength. If it's more a question of healing, then you simply need time. And a water fast, a long water fast, a long extended healing water fast is the best way to go. Now, one further issue which is worth considering in deciding whether you want to dry fast or to water fast is many people just have a natural inclination towards one or the other. As you can imagine, the idea of dry fasting is a little scary for a lot of people, and probably most people do find that water fasting is easier than dry fasting, precisely because you are drinking. Nevertheless, there are some people who actually find the opposite. They find dry fasting simpler. On a deep psychological level, it's a much more black and white situation. You don't put anything into your body, so there are no temptations. In water fasting, because you're drinking, it's kind of in a gray area, and whenever we're in a situation where rules aren't fixed, when there are gray areas, it's easier sometimes to slip up and allow your ego to get the best of you, and then just the whole thing can fall apart. So personal preference is an important element to take into consideration. Another element to take into consideration is the time of year. So if it's the middle of July, obviously not like here in England at the moment, if it's middle of July, it's really hot, simply the heat is going to be working against a dry fast. You'll be sweating out your fluids instead of fasting out your fluids. I've made that distinction before. So remember, sweating out your fluids is not going to reach that same deep level of cleansing and detox that fasting out your fluids will. In the wintertime, on the other hand, it's interesting to note the exact opposite, that often one problem people have while water fasting is they get the chills. It's very easy to feel cold. In general, when you're dry fasting, this is much less of a problem. Okay, another factor is the amount of time that you have to fast. So obviously, if you want to do a massively long healing fast, you need a lot of time for that. But a lot of us, in terms of doing maintenance fasts, we just don't have that much time in everyday life. And in that sense, a dry fast is more effective because it packs a more powerful punch, let's say. These are all additional factors which you should really keep in mind, in addition to that fundamental question of whether you're fasting for detox and cleansing or whether for healing. Of course, in actual fact, especially when it comes to maintenance fasts for just keeping a general good health, all three of these issues are taking place side by side. It is a question of cleansing, it is a question of detox, it is a question of healing. So I hope this has been able to make things a little bit clearer in terms of the differences between dry fasting and water fasting. My suggestion is try them both out and you'll find out for yourself what works for you.